We are back with more regular show, The Lost Tapes. We just got a batch of 4 new episodes, and I typically look at 2 episodes for each video, but I'm actually going to look at all 4 of the new episodes. But instead of starting off with episode 6, I'm going to start off with episode 7 and 8, because I want the main topic of this video to be about the origins of Benson and Muscle Man, as I think these are very interesting episodes. But I do think the other 2 episodes are also interesting as well, so definitely stick around for that. Alright, so the first episode we're going to take a look at is Benson. This episode basically gives us the insight of how Benson got his job at the park, which is a pretty cool concept. I like that. So we get to find out that Benson was actually a groundskeeper originally before becoming the manager. And this takes us into a flashback of back when Benson was in the band Heir to the Throne, which is actually a callback to the episode 100 Piece Kit, where we get to find out that Benson was the drummer of this band, but he was unfortunately kicked out and replaced by a robot. And this actually gives us a better insight of what happened between Benson and the band. And I think it's really cool we get a callback of this band. In this flashback, a bunch of fans approach the band, so Benson is like, "Stand back guys, I got this." And given how often we see Benson around girls, I thought Benson would be all over this, and that is typically how rock stars always are. But I was completely surprised by what happened here.
Get lost!
Yeah, so Benson tells them to kick rocks. So this scene alone tells us that Benson did not care about distractions. He focused primarily on what mattered most, which is being musicians. And that is honestly very respectable from Benson. Music artists always love having groupies, so this was a huge surprise for me personally. Even Benson's band members were shocked by this. And then we get to see a scene where Benson has a whole schedule where he lists off flossing, working out, and even colonoscopies, which is crazy.
Exercise 3 times a week and do an annual colonoscopy.
But yeah, all the band members are pissed off by how organized and responsible Benson is. And whenever Benson mentions band practice, he immediately gets kicked off the bus, which I think is hilarious. Benson was definitely saying a lot there. I mean, annually colonoscopies is crazy. Definitely not necessary for rock stars to do that, but hey, at least the man has priorities. But yeah, after this, we get a scene of Benson chilling by a garage, but this guy walks up to Benson, acts like an asshole, and then steals his soda. And after this, we get to see Benson after he ate a bunch of wings. And I'm sure most of you guys know this already, but wings are basically the regular show equivalent of being drunk. So Benson stumbles across the park, and as he sits down on the bench, he starts laying down some pretty sick beats with the wing bucket that he had. And honestly, I love it whenever talented musicians are able to improvise and make these cool sounds without using actual instruments. And it looks like Pops feels the same way, because he walks up to Benson, he applauds him, and he offers Benson a job at the park. So Benson at first is pretty hesitant because he is a rock star first and foremost, but right now he's not sure what else to do because his band basically left him behind. So he accepts the job anyway. And here we get to see the co-workers, which is Skips, Muscle Man, and High Five Ghost. And yeah, Muscle Man has a whole volleyball outfit. Yeah, he used to be a volleyball player. We'll get into that later. I also do love the haircut that High Five Ghost has. I just want to mention that. But there is actually one more person at the park, and that is a person named Tox. And as soon as Pops mentions this guy, everybody sighs. They must really hate this guy. But this is where we get to see the character for ourselves. And the guy is immediately an asshole.
And so long since you've seen a barber?
He's basically busting everybody's chops, as he says.
Just busting your chops.
So yeah, this guy is basically the ultimate trash talker and the ultimate slacker. So the guy is basically the most unlikable person ever. And as soon as Benson mentions any work, this guy's whole body starts to start swelling and stuff. It's like really weird. But it comes to show how much this guy actually hates working. And Benson basically has to bribe this guy to chill out and walk away. And as this guy walks away, Benson talks everybody else into cleaning up the entire park that is a complete mess right now. And yeah, we get a whole montage of them locking in, repairing everything, cleaning up the whole park. The only thing I wish this montage had was like an 80s song to go alongside it, you know? But this is still a perfectly fine scene. We also get to see Muscle Man throw a trash bag like a volleyball into a dumpster, which was a pretty cool scene. You know what this episode actually reminds me of? There was a whole episode in the original series where these 2 guys, I think they're called Wes and Wesley, they were basically busting everybody's chops. And then High Five Ghost came in and said something absolutely diabolical to these guys, which I thought was hilarious.
We're just a couple of disc jockeys who haven't seen any real action since you left the academy.
So yeah, I think this new character is basically a callback to these characters. And speaking of this new character, as he comes back, he actually takes all the credit for the park being cleaned up. And after Benson confronts him about it, Skips, Muscle Man, and Fives immediately leave because they know this guy is gonna start tweaking. And yeah, they basically have a whole argument. This guy is pissed off that Benson is actually doing work. He gets like all swollen, looks like he has like hemorrhoids. And as Benson mentions that he's a part of a band, this guy obviously doesn't believe him. And then we get to see a billboard where Benson is replaced by the Drumatron, which was actually seen in the 100-piece drum kit episode. So Benson confronts the band members, and yeah, they basically confirm that he got completely replaced. There's also a funny scene where the Drumatron is hanging out with ladies. And then after this, we get to see Benson. He notices a glass of water isn't on a coaster, so he puts it on a coaster. And then the band members get pissed off by how organized he is. But yeah, Benson is very depressed after this happening. He got replaced by a robot, but this is where we get to see Pops and the crew come back to talk to him. And they mention how much they appreciated Benson for helping them work together efficiently. So this is where Pops offers Benson to be the new manager of the park. And Pops shows Benson a cute little drawing he made of Benson getting rid of this guy. So Benson of course accepts this. But as he comes to the park, there's like Nickelodeon slime all over the park, which is kind of weird. And as Benson is writing up talks, this guy gets really pissed off. His face gets all swollen, he's like sweating the green goo. And as Benson tells this guy it's time for him to go, this guy turns into like some acid monster thing. And yeah, this transformation scares everybody. Muscle Man falls over and breaks his elbows, so he loses his beach volleyball scholarship.
My beach volleyball scholarship!
Which is a really funny scene, probably the funniest moment in the episode. And this is where we get to see the return of Super Saiyan Benson, where he basically has like so much power from being so pissed off. And as he screams "you're fired," a whole beam shoots directly at this guy. And after getting blasted, this guy is nothing but bones, and he fades away. It's awesome. So Benson basically killed a man, but in all fairness, he did deserve it. He was a huge monster. So not only did Benson save the park, but he's been managing the park ever since that day. And that is basically the origins of Benson working at the park, which is a pretty cool episode. I do like that. We also get a lot more context of what happened to Benson's band and why he stopped being a drummer. So this was definitely a great episode, all things considered. And after Benson tells this story, Mordecai and Ruby don't really care. They're more impressed that Muscle Man had a volleyball scholarship. I feel kind of bad they didn't care for Benson's story, but also it makes it a lot funnier. And now let's go over to the next episode. And this is basically the part 2 where Muscle Man gives his backstory. And even though Muscle Man isn't the smartest person, he still had a very good memory of what happened and was able to explain everything basically. So this all begins when Starla broke up with Muscle Man for the first time. And I'm not gonna lie, I do feel bad about how he found out about Starla breaking up with him. Muscle Man was just hanging around at the theater at the arcade, just doing his thing, but then he decides to walk into Starla's work to see how she's doing. But to Muscle Man's surprise, we get to see Starla crossing out her tramp stamp that had Muscle Man's name on it, which insinuates that she's over him. She basically says Muscle Man has nothing going on with his life, he's a slacker, and she wants a new man that has more going on or something. And yeah, Muscle Man starts crying whenever she finishes the strike through on the tattoo. Thankfully, he doesn't cry as hard as he did in that one episode where we saw Starla for the first time, so it wasn't as excessive, but it is still pretty sad to say the least. And as Muscle Man struggles to find something that he's good at, he is perfectly volleyball hitting these pieces of trash into the trash can. And this guy sitting next to him takes notice of this. And as Muscle Man is absolutely tweaking, this random guy takes notice of Muscle Man's excellent volleyball skills. And this guy's name is Dan Diggs. And this guy was a former volleyball professional before his life basically fell apart, and he needs a new teammate to get his life together or something. So Muscle Man at first is hesitant, but this guy really sees the potential in Muscle Man's volleyball abilities. This guy helps influence Muscle Man into believing that this will help him get Starla back. So Muscle Man is now down for this. So he gets this whole volleyball outfit. And yeah, this guy is a legit volleyball player. He even knows how to hit the ball blindfolded. But then we get to see Starla's new boyfriend, Steve. And Steve is not some random guy. This is actually Dan's volleyball rival. And this guy apparently beat Dan Diggs so hard that his soul left his body, which is absolutely crazy. But for a regular show, that's exactly what you expect. So nothing out of the ordinary. And now we get to see Starla get a new tattoo with Steve's name on it, which Muscle Man is defeated by. And now we get to see Dan motivate Muscle Man that they have to win to get Starla back. back. And then we get this really funny scene right here where this guy says it's a super dangerous tournament that they're about to compete in. They keep making these serious shots of these characters in these episodes. I love it. But yeah, Muscle Man is down for this as long as it can get Starlet's attention. And then we get to see a dolphin named Blake who has massive abs and even a visor shaped out of his bones. And there is actually a callback right here because this dolphin has a translator, and it's actually the same translator as the coffee bean guy in that random episode where that coffee bean sprayed coffee out of his nipples into Mordecai and Ruby's mouths. I still have no idea how they put that in a kid's show, but I digress. But yeah, always fun to see a random character returning. And even though Muscle Man is down, High Five Ghost gives him a motivational speech.
Because I knew it meant you'd finally left to go make something of yourself, or you'd overslept again.
And now Muscle Man is ready for the volleyball tournament. Muscle Man and Dan absolutely annihilate the competition. It was not even close. And they make it to the final game against Steve and the Dolphin. And this dolphin has an absolutely insane move. They basically kick the volleyball, it revolves around the entire earth, and then it comes back and slams into Muscle Man's side of the court. So yeah, these guys start to dog walk Muscle Man and Dan. So Muscle Man crawls back over to Starla. He's getting desperate here. Muscle Man is so defeated, he's crying, he has a black eye, but he's not backing down, he's still fighting to win this match. And yeah, he basically has a whole breakdown while scoring on the other team, but he's actually doing great at making a comeback, so it's actually a close match. But Muscle Man starts to overthink and he sinks under the quicksand. But this is when everything clicks and he emerges from the quicksand and gives a giant serve. It smacks the dolphin in the face and then the ball revolves around the earth and then it slams into their side of the court. And Muscle Man and Dan Diggs win the competition. And this next scene right here is absolutely diabolical. So the dolphin starts sinking and the translator, instead of saving the dolphin, is translating what he says.
Stop translating and help me.
But then the coffee bean comes in. So this is basically the origin story of the coffee bean in the translator as well. And yeah, Muscle Man wins his volleyball competition. And this is where Muscle Man gets to win his scholarship to the Wing Kingdom University. That probably explains why Muscle Man loves Wing Kingdom so much. And after this win, Muscle Man offers Dan Diggs to team up together for another competition. And after this, his entire body vanishes. But this is where we finally get to see Starla come back to Muscle Man. And Muscle Man finally found his purpose, which is playing volleyball. So there you have it. And yeah, Muscle Man was basically a volleyball player until he broke his wrist in that Benson flashback. It turns out the scholarship was also only worth $100. So honestly, it wasn't that much of a loss to begin with. But yeah, that was also a really solid episode. I definitely like Benson's origin more, but this is also pretty fun. And now we're going back to episode 6, which is Corpse Flower. And this episode is actually based on Mordecai and Margaret and Rigby and Eileen. The episode kind of has a rough start with the animation. It looks like some animation you see in a Flash game, but Mordecai and Rigby have a cool little rap before Margaret butchers the rap. So Margaret is stressed out because she has a poetry elective and she's afraid of how her performance will go. So Mordecai basically tries to encourage her and he actually comes alongside her to watch her during the public reading. And then Eileen comes in and says this.
You want to smell a deceased bod?
I was so confused whenever she said this, but she was actually referring to a flower and not like an actual deceased body. So yeah, it's called a corpse flower. And for some reason, Eileen wants to smell it for whatever reason. But Rigby is down to help her with this. So we basically get two separate plots in this episode. Eileen is a good friend and she does not want to miss Margaret's reading. She wants to be there for her. So Rigby says he has a Rig Bonafide guarantee where Eileen can see both the corpse flower and Margaret's reading.
You can do both. I give you my Rig Bonafide guarantee.
They also say Rig Bonafide guarantee a lot in this episode. It's a small nitpick, but I noticed like how often they repeat the same lines occasionally in some episodes. So like that's my only issue really with the writing. But before Rigby and Eileen go to see the corpse flower, they go to a hot chicken drive-thru and get some food. And yeah, they get these super messy sandwiches. And Rigby ends up rubbing the sauce all over Muscle Man's car. And trust me, this actually is important for later. But we get to see that Rigby actually drew down a plan and he has like a cute little drawing of himself and Eileen. And Eileen is very impressed with Rigby having a whole checklist and being organized. Rigby has a pretty smooth line right here.
I just want you to have your flour and smell it too.
And it actually gets intimate for a second right here.
The chicken sandwiches aren't the only thing that's hot around here.
Yeah, we all get the idea. But yeah, Rigby and Eileen then make it over to the quartz flower. But unfortunately, the quartz flower hasn't bloomed yet, so they can't smell it. And at this point, they won't make it to Margaret's poetry reading. So Rigby has a plan. Rigby basically just straight up steals the quartz flower and places it in the trunk. And yeah, they're basically in a huge rush because Margaret is panicking. Going back to Rigby, he is speeding, so the police begin to pull them over. And the police can smell a stench from the trunk, which is the quartz flower, but they think it smells like a dead body. And given there is red sauce on the trunk of the car, the police think it's blood. And then we get this awkward confrontation where they walk up to Rigby. So Rigby starts sweating profusely. He doesn't want Eileen to see that he stole the quartz flower. So instead of working with the police, he just drives away on them. And as Rigby and Eileen are panicking as they are speeding, they crash right into the building that Margaret's at. And Muscle Man is not even worried about his car, but rather the sandwich that he asked Rigby to get him. But they actually make it before Margaret gives her reading, so they still make it on time. And yeah, we get like an underwhelming poetry from Margaret, but then the quartz flower blooms in the middle of her poetry, and everybody gets a whiff of the quartz flower and it smells disgusting. This scene with Eileen where she inhales the quartz flower is insane. It looks like she is absolutely baked out of her mind. And after Margaret is done with her poetry reading, even though everybody walked out on her, she was still happy she was able to deliver that speech. So everything was a huge mess, but everything still worked out. Margaret did fine with the reading and Eileen got the quartz flower. But this is where the police are seen again. They notice the quartz flower and they realize that Rigby isn't a murderer after all. And they basically ask for the chicken sandwich, but Muscle Man does not back down. He drives off on the police with his chicken sandwiches, and that is how the episode ends. So yeah, this is a great episode that helps build the relationships between Mordecai and Margaret and Rigby and Eileen. I think it's definitely a fun episode, and so far Margaret is actually a likable character. So I definitely enjoyed this episode. And now we have the final episode, which is Stilt Walkers. This episode definitely doesn't compare to the other episodes, but there is still a crazy moment in this episode that's really funny. I can't wait to talk about it. So I don't think this is a bad episode by any means, just on the weaker side. We get to see Muscle Man with the camera, but the camera only has one exposure left, which basically means he can only take one more photo before it runs out of storage. So he's waiting for the perfect moment to take a photo. And this is where we get to see Rigby on Stilt Walkers. And Rigby uses these Stilt Walkers to reach these Christmas decorations, as Benson tasked them to get rid of the Christmas decorations. So Rigby is able to do this by himself, and Rigby thinks this would be an awesome photo for Muscle Man, but Muscle Man says the idea stinks, which offends Rigby. So then Rigby storms off in his Stilt Walkers. So Rigby comes across a couple that is about to get engaged, and Rigby totally ruins their moment by basically annoying them, and they tell Rigby that the idea stinks, which disappoints Rigby. But this is where Uncle Sam emerges through the bushes and talks to Rigby, and yes, it's that Uncle Sam for whatever reason. And this apprentice of his walks in and he calls Rigby a groundy, which sounds like a really bad slur.
What are you doing talking to this groundy?
It definitely gets worse whenever he calls Rigby a stupid groundy.
Whatever, stupid groundy.
Yeah, Rigby tries to talk to Muscle Man about finding Uncle Sam, and whenever Rigby tries to ask Mordecai to back him up, Mordecai doesn't back him up. So Rigby storms off to Uncle Sam, and this is where Uncle Sam introduces Rigby to this little town that he has of all these people that are on stilts. Even this horse is on stilts. It's a weird little place. Rigby here expresses his grievances with his friends not supporting him, but randomly he mentions his dad being unsupportive,
Mordecai and the rest of the guys and my dad?
which makes everything awkward, so he quickly changes the conversation. And then Uncle Sam shows Rigby this beautiful scenery right here and calls Rigby son, which makes Rigby tear up. So yeah, they play catch together, they start fishing, they do math together, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, this part is surprisingly wholesome, but it's not wholesome for much longer. They get offended when Rigby wants to go back to his friends, so he offers Rigby to live with them. But we get a cutaway to Mordecai, Eileen, and even CJ, who's in this episode. Rigby comes through the window and talks about moving in with Uncle Sam and the other Stilt guys. And then Mordecai says the idea stinks, which makes Rigby freak out, so he packs a bag and leaves, but a tape falls out. Muscle Man begins snooping around and plays Rigby's tape. It starts off fine with showing us Harder and Briggs on TV, but then it shows us a video of Rigby when he was a kid. And Rigby looks really cute here, but this is what happens in the whole tape.
A blank Rito!
go.
Nah, that idea stinks.
Yeah, Rigby's dad is basically a unsupportive deadbeat, and we already knew this, but I never really thought much about this up until now. And yeah, it makes everybody sad watching this back. So now Mordecai is worried about Rigby, and he goes to look for him.
Those groundies I used to call my friends.
Hey, watch the G slur. But out of nowhere, Uncle Sam wants $12,000 from Rigby, which is kind of whack, honestly.
I want you to give me $12,000.
It turns out this little town is actually supposed to be a whole country. So Rigby calls this out as being a scam, which heavily offends Uncle Sam. But then Mordecai and the crew pulls up in their stilts. And as they try to bring Rigby back home, a whole fight breaks out. And this is easily the best part of the episode. I love this one scene where Muscle Man gets pieced up by a cow, of all things. And there's also this one scene where Skips uses Eileen to basically chop away at these people. And then she punches all these people in the face. And this is the best part right here. This is where we get to see Mordecai kick all these guys in the balls. And there is a crazy scene right here where there's like a whole Mortal Kombat fatality scene where we get to see their nuts being crushed. Dude, that is so crazy. And Rigby does like a spin attack on Uncle Sam. And this is where Muscle Man finds the perfect shot to take the photo. So yeah, we finally get a photo of Rigby on stilts. And this is also when Mordecai finally talks to Rigby that he should confront his dad. And we get a cutaway of Rigby visiting his dad. And that's how the episode ends right there. I think the confrontation with his dad could have been a bit stronger there. I do also think the episode drags on a bit, even though there is some great moments here. And this also gives us more context on Rigby as a character. This guy didn't really have a supportive father, which is pretty sad. But I do love the ending here, the whole fight scene, and Mordecai being a good friend to Rigby. I think the first half of the episode was definitely missing something, but the second half made the episode enjoyable. So I definitely consider this the weaker episode of the bunch, but I don't think it's bad by any means. And yeah, that is all the new episodes of the Lost Tapes. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me cover 4 of the episodes. Instead of doing the usual 2 episodes each, I usually only do 2 episodes each so I can get the videos edited and ready more efficiently. But I just want to try something different for this video. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about these episodes. And that's about it. I'll see you guys in the flip.